This is the most attractive system I've ever built, and honestly, it's not even close. There's just something about the clean, sterile, and industrial look of silver that really speaks to me. And thermals, they're actually really impressive. Even with the RTX 5080 Fe and the 9950X, we're seeing nearly 40 degrees while idling on the CPU and 83 degrees max in the Cinebench multi-core stress test, all thanks to the dual-fan Noctua D12L, which really inspired the direction for this setup. And the 5080 is sitting comfortable at a max of 65 degrees in City Skylines 2. The case we're using is the NCASE M2 Grater in the eye-catching silver finish, a case long admired for its Grater front panel, build quality, and hardware compatibility. At just 16 liters, it can fit a MATX motherboard and an enormous graphics card up to 359 millimeters. Apart from the goal of being as silver as possible, it needed to use several mods to assist with airflow. We have this dual 120mm front fan bracket adding active cooling to the front panel with two Noctua slim fans mounted as exhaust. This does slightly conflict with the power supply and the radiator mounting bracket on the front panel. The flip GPU bracket gives the 5080 or 5090 Fe added stability. It anchors to two screw holes on the backplate via threaded M3 screws. However, you are limited to one GPU and motherboard position for this to work. These I/O backplate covers help eliminate the massive hole at the rear of the case beneath the GPU, and I think this looks 1,000 times better. Lastly, we have the 15mm angled feet. These just look so much better than the rubber nubs that come stock with the M2. Oddly enough, it's much easier to start with the power supply. The Asus ROG Low-Key 750-watt unit adds that special silver touch this build really needs. We'll mount it in the very bottom position or the top backplate if you're building in the reference version of this. 95% of this build can apply to the reference layout as well. I went with a brand new MSI B850i Edge Ti Mini ITX motherboard. Apart from the silver color, you get PCIe 5.0, Wi-Fi 7, and 5GB LAN, something that really should come standard in 2025. The I/O isn't as robust as the Asus ROG B850i from a USB standpoint, but for some, the 5GB Ethernet makes up for it. And we're not doing any serious overclocking, so the 9950X on this board should be more than fine. Since we're using a second fan on the Noctua D12L, we need an extremely low clearance memory kit. My only option was to strip away the heatsink on this 32GB kit from KingBank. As we'll see later, memory temps are completely under control and this kit doesn't run warm even with Expo enabled. For the game library, I have the 2TB Oracle IG740 Pro, a Gen 4 M.2 SSD. For most people, Gen 4 is more than enough. Gen 5 is still just incredibly expensive. I'm confident the active cooling on this MSI B850i can handle Gen 5 M.2 SSDs if we choose to upgrade in the future. I spoke to Noctua about my desire for a silver and black D12L, and they delivered. This is essentially the original D12L with a rounded Chromax fan swap. The second fan only fits due to the stripped down memory kit from earlier. To get the absolute best thermals for AM5, I recommend using the 7mm offset setup, shifting the cooler over those two 8-core CCDs on the 9950X. We're going with a rear intake for the CPU cooler, helping to tilt the build toward a positive air pressure setup. The motherboard slots in perfectly, and this looks pretty amazing to me. The silver PCB on the MSI B850i really stands out. This is a great time to install your power supply cables. I was going to go with the silver transparent cables, but I've settled on what I believe is the best looking cables from my DIY. These really stiff, all black, premium silver wire cables. They're not the easiest to work with in a small build, but they form decently and can really save you space compared to soft silicone or braided set. My measurements are 400mm on the CPU, 300 on the GPU 12V high power cable, and 300mm on the 24-pin cable. The GPU support bracket secures to the backplate. This was a tight fit because of the SFX-L power supply, but if you go with a smaller unit like the Corsair 3.1 SFX unit, you should be fine. On the motherboard's rear M.2 slot, I have a basic 250GB Western Digital Gen 4 M.2 SSD as a dedicated Windows drive. Once we add our 12V high power cable, the 5080 Founders card comes in beautifully. Also, don't forget to install your power extension cable like me. But if you do, just remove the 2 M3 screws on the rear panel and swerve in the cable. Planning is key. The custom 3D printed 15mm angled feet have to be secured twice. Once securing the feet to the bottom panel, and then the bottom panel to the case with M3 countersunk screws. This is probably my favorite of all the mods used in this video. These feet really elevate the look of the M2. Since we have so much space on the top of the 5080, replacing 2 intaking Noctua A12 25mm Chromax fans. This gives the case 2 intakes and 1 exhaust through the front panel. You now have 3 side panel options, the brand new, beautifully color matched silver panels, something I honestly didn't see coming, but I'm glad they're here. Then you have the original black panels, which some claim they like the contrast of the silver and black. Then for those wanting a better view of their components, the glass side panel. They all look really amazing, however I'll probably go with the silver and glass panel. By the way, the D12L does touch the side panel, but honestly, it's not bad at all. There is a 1mm bulge, but it doesn't interfere with closing the case either. What is your favorite side panel? The new silver color, the original black, or the glass side panel? Let me know down in the comments. You may have noticed the silver colors don't exactly match, but they're pretty close in my opinion. But most importantly, I wanted to try something different. We're left with a super clean, super cool build with great thermals. With all fans set to 1000 RPM, the build is quiet, less than the ambient noise in the room. I originally wanted to review the Grater M2 when it was announced, but with manufacturing and shipping delays, it just wasn't in the cards. Now that I have it, I have no problem saying that this is the best case I've owned. I really don't mind losing the front I/O as I don't use that anyway. The rear power button is tactile and I personally like it better than the LED power button on the rounded model. The Grater is an overall improvement over the rounded model. I'll talk more about the new MSI B850i Edge Ti in a future review. I welcome more competition in the ITX space, and this board does offer some competitive benefits like that 5GB LAN. Unfortunately, this board doesn't offer as much rear I/O as I'd like. I believe that 2 USB Type-C ports should be an absolute minimum on ITX, MATX, and ATX motherboards. It does offer a BIOS flashback and a clear CMOS button, a very important asset in these tiny builds. You also get Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4 with their new connector type. I'm a fan of the connector, but not the antenna. It just feels clunky and probably hard to disguise on your desk, but still a solid board nonetheless. I want to give a special thanks to Noctua for providing me with the D12L and the rounded Chromax fans. They've been absolutely supportive and they really care about small content creators like myself. Another special thanks to MODDIY for providing the custom set of power supply cables. I'll provide a link in the description if you want to grab a pair. What do you think of my cable management skills? The secret? Patience, zip ties, and more zip ties. See you next time.